friends, and welcome back to Genuine Life Recovery. I'm Jody Stevens. Very excited about this show because we are going to be talking about the intersection of grief, mental health, and addiction. And of course, overcoming and living a happy and healthy life in spite of all the ups and downs. And I'm joined by Amy Sazama. She's the author of Fleetwood Dreams, Climbing a Mountain After a Landslide. So this is a memoir, and these are not easy to write. It's a memoir of heartache, loss, and the story of her climb back up. Amy spent many years as a case manager, and in addition to her writing, she's now a fitness instructor. So welcome, Amy. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said beforehand, I had a little sound bath meditation this morning, so I'm feeling really good.
Good. This is Amy's first podcast, so I'm glad that you're on mine.
Thank you. Like I said, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So are you in Wisconsin?
I am.
Okay.
Kind of close to Milwaukee, a little bit west. So if you're familiar with that, kind of in between Milwaukee and Madison.
Is there snow there?
There is. I woke up this morning. I thought it was actually supposed to be nice today. And then I woke up and looked outside. I'm like, there's snow on the ground, which is not uncommon for Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Anchorage, so I know the feeling.
You know the feeling, yeah. My daughter gets really excited, though. Me, not so much, and my husband, because we're plowing and shoveling, but she's excited for this.
Of course, snow day, right?
Exactly.
Amy, are you a Fleetwood Mac fan?
I am. I'm a Fleetwood Mac fan, definitely. I've seen them in concert as well, so.
Did you watch Fire Aid?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Stevie Nicks was on there doing Landslide.
Oh, okay. I did not watch. No, I love.
It wasn't a super great. I mean, she still looks amazing for age and stuff. So they had a lot of, they had a lot of old school artists on there, like Stephen Stills, Earth, Wind and Fire, that were in their 80s.
My dad's a big Earth, Fire fan,
right? September, they're still going strong.
Around the house in high school, and my friends would be staying over, and they're like, "What is that noise?" I'm like, "That's my dad vacuuming and singing Earth, Wind and Fire."
Oh, I love that. So, Amy, I'd love for you to start by sharing your story with us, your journey through trauma. My understanding is you lost your mom and your brother,
which
my twin brother, moved
actually.
you. Oh, all right. Yeah, twin, like maternal.
I feel like that makes a big difference. Yeah, twins have a special bond, so that was hard.
Were you paternal? Maternal twins or
fraternal twins? Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and so I know that impacted your mental health in a big way, moved you toward addiction. So if you wouldn't mind, just take some time and give us your story.
Sure.
Obviously, the shorter version.
What I mean? I feel like,
when I say short, take your time. I'm just saying, like, our lives are, I hate to make people be like, oh, tell us your whole life, but if 10-15 minutes is fine.
Every grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost my mom unexpectedly when I was in high school. So I was 16 when I lost my mom. She died of an allergic reaction, so it was very sudden. She definitely, that shook me to my core. My parents at this point, so my parents were together. They divorced. I should back it up just a little bit, but they divorced when my brother and I were in second grade. And so my mom remarried, and I had a stepbrother and stepsister at the time, and then my twin brother, and everybody kind of compared our family to the Brady Bunch. We were always doing things together and just a big family. And so losing my mom unexpectedly like that just really shook me to my core. And then my brother and I were both uprooted. We had the choice to either go and live with my dad or stay with my stepdad and step siblings. And we both decided to go live with our dad. So it was just a big challenge to be uprooted and then go through this like grief and trauma and this first loss. But we had each other. So that was, I feel like twins just have a deep connection to one another. We leaned on each other heavily. We both handled the grief very differently. Unfortunately, my brother chose a different path. I ended up graduating high school, going on to college, meeting friends, new friends, staying busy, and he was masking his pain with drugs. And so
Oh,
unexpectedly, when I was 22, my brother was robbed and killed during during a robbery. Yeah, gone wrong. And so that was very, very, very traumatic, obviously, to go through that. And so again, that was when I was 22. So lost my mom at 16. Now I just lost my twin brother at 22. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the trauma that I
wow.
went through, and the hardship and the pain and suffering and that. So
Wow. And
yeah,
so it's like, you've got the divorce
yeah,
and then you're living with your dad and then
kind of
mom is
uprooted.
passed.
Yep,
Right, your mom is passed at 16, which is a very just a, your brain is still developing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then your brother, you got the heartache of him turning to drugs and alcohol
yep,
and then he's murdered.
yeah,
Oh my word,
yeah,
Amy, this is like, wow.
yeah.
So, for those of you listening, it's these types of trauma that are very common with addictions and mental health. They
Hmm.
don't just, we're not just born with these things. We're not just, there's definitely some genetics in play. Like I lost my brother to addiction, so I understand that grief, but not my mom. So in a way I did because she kind of deteriorated as he
Yeah,
deteriorated with the
yeah,
addiction,
mhm,
which I'm sure then your dad was grieving, so
yeah.
you probably it was like you lost your whole
It was
family
like I
probably.
lost everything that I was comfortable with,
Mm.
everything I knew, my safety net, everything was different. And then, like, the reverse, my dad and I almost had a reversal where now I'm kind of taking care of him because he's just not taking care of himself anymore. Smoking cigarettes
Wow.
and just not eating healthy. And he was just very obviously depressed. So I felt at that point like now I'm just no one's really watching after me. I'm kind of the caretaker of everybody. Yeah, it was really hard, really
So
traumatic.
in your book you talk about, can a twin survive without their twin? So you guys, you're so close. How did his loss impact your sense of like identity and who you were? Also, how you coped with grief?
Well, at the time, I didn't really know that I was in active addiction. I think I had that preconceived notion that in order to be like an alcoholic, you have to drink every single day. You're sitting home, you're not functioning, you're shaking because you need another drink. It took me a long time
Right.
to realize that I was an alcoholic and I was using alcohol to cope with the pain and loss of my brother, by
Mhm.
just drinking too much, blacking out, apologizing for my behavior. I never did anything where, you know, getting arrested or, in my mind, that's what you need to do to be an addict. But looking back, that is definitely how I coped with both the loss of my mom and my brother.
Mm.
So, and I think especially twins, they just have that bond. Like you said, there's such an identity. Like I even remember in college, we would have to, like, on the first day, share a fun fact about yourself. My fun fact always was that I would stand up in front of the room, introduce myself and say, "Hi, I'm Amy, I'm a twin." Everybody knew me as a twin. And so
Mm.
now I'm trying to figure out who I am. So I think
Yeah.
in a way, even losing a mom is really hard, but losing a twin is, I felt like half of me was gone. And another thing is, like, I've always been a little bit more shy, and my brother was always kind of the funny one that would take the lead and talk for the two of us, and he was more outgoing. And now I just felt like my protection was gone. It's like now I'm just
Mm.
kind of out there and figuring out who I am now as a person without my other half. And so,
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, I don't think anybody who's gone through trauma, I think we kind of learn as we go what's healthy and what's not. And I definitely, especially at those ages in high school and in college, was learning and didn't cope the best way that I could.
When did you start using, was it alcohol and drugs or both?
I never used drugs.
Okay.
I would say alcohol. I would say after my
Mhm.
mom died. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, I couldn't wait until the weekend where I could just grab a few beers and, like, forget the pain that I was dealing with inside. And so it kind
Yeah.
of started out there, but I don't feel like a lot of people really knew because, again, like, I've always been what people would consider like on the straight and narrow. Like I graduated from high school, I went on to college. I've always been active in different activities. Nobody really
Yeah.
knew what I was going through on the inside. And I think that hurt even more.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the other thing is that when you're 14, 15, 16, even in your teens, even in college, people don't go, it sounds like you have some underlying grief that's,
Yeah, right.
causing you to, we just don't even think that way.
Not
I mean,
even close.
no, I didn't think that way. I didn't realize, oh, wow, at 14, I started self medicating my anxiety disorder with alcohol. So I didn't know that. And of course, neither did my parents because,
No.
my grandmother or grandpa was an addict. And so you just, everybody's just trying to sort of cope, but they don't have the skills to cope.
Right.
Right. And so for you, what I wanted to say and let you respond is that, when people turn to addiction, to deal with trauma, it's actually a pretty natural reaction because you're trying to fix something. So you're
Hmm.
trying to fix the pain. When I say natural, I just mean you're doing the only thing you know how to do. You're just going
Right.
about it the wrong way, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I also think there's an element, like you said, where I think age, like my friends didn't know either because, well, some of them read my book now and they were in college with me and they're just like, we had no idea because there is a
Mm,
little bit of we're in college, we're going to let loose, we're going to go to this party. They don't, I feel like they're not identifying like she's struggling, she's drinking too much, she's hungover, she needs support. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I just feel like there's a lot of that too, that stigma of like you're in high school, you're in college, go let loose. But when you're dealing with something internally, that trauma and that pain, you can take it too far. That's not the path. That's not the way to deal with it.
absolutely. Well, and there's just plain immaturity. I mean, when I was
Right.
in college, we had this huge party, and my friend, she got these cantaloupe balls and stuck them in straight Everclear and made
Oh,
this like jungle juice. And there was a guy like foaming at the mouth, passed out.
oh,
They were writing on him with the Sharpie. And, the kid could have died. Like in this
yeah.
day,
Right.
now they would have charged us with murder if he
Yeah.
died. I mean, we were just laughing, walking, like that's just how we were. I mean, we were probably a
Right.
little worse than you, but the point of it is it's just we're not old enough to process that
No.
kind of
But now that I'm a
grief and
mom, I
pain.
swear I look back though and I'm like, how did I make it home all these times? Like how was I safe? You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
you kind of
Yeah.
look back in hindsight like someone was watching over me that I made it from here to here without remembering it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, amen to that. So, how did your unresolved grief contribute to you say addiction and mental health. So what were some other sort of mental health challenges
For me,
that you
it's just
struggled with?
anxiety. Definitely anxiety and depression. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And I would say I had a lot of panic attacks too, but I did not know what they were. I had no idea. Like, this is what I'm having is a panic attack. Why is the room
mhm.
spinning? Why can't I breathe? Why do I need to go home right now? Why? I just don't feel like I was educated enough to understand any of that. And that drinking was actually making all of that worse. Drinking
Right.
contributes to anxiety, but I didn't know any of that.
Mm.
So I would say for me, it was definitely anxiety and depression is how it affected me
And
many, many, many years.
yeah, wow. And I had generalized anxiety disorder, but I started having panic attacks at 21 when I first started in radio. And, my mom took me to the emergency room because same thing. You feel like they
Yeah,
call it derealization, where, and if you've ever had one, you hear that and you go, I get it. Like nothing seems real, like you're
nothing.
on the
Yes.
moon. Like I can look at this wall or background here and know what it is, but it doesn't make sense. It's the
Right.
weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, they just gave me Xanax. So you pop a
That's
Xanax,
okay.
right?
That's what they gave me too. Is like just
Yeah.
pop one of these before you sleep, and you'll be fine. It's like okay, so now you're gonna give somebody who's dealing with this trauma, already drinking alcohol, a Xanax instead of getting to the root cause of the issue. But yeah, you understand.
And that's what happens, right? I mean, I was popping Xanax and drinking tequila until I thought I was going to die. And, that's when I got sober. But I will say that, it does help if you know how to use it. I mean, yeah. So it sounds like they just didn't get to the root cause, and obviously
No.
that's not what they're going to do when you're in a medical situation, But I mean, what? So when did you kind of come to terms with all of this? Like, this idea of, oh, I'm having this underlying issues that are contributing to the addiction, Xanax, whatever it is. I need to quit or get some help, or, kind of what was the aha moment, I guess, if there was one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't really recall. Maybe I'll think of it, but I don't really recall one aha moment. It was just like being sick
Hmm.
and tired, if that makes sense. Of like waking
Yes.
up and feeling the exact same thing and realizing that I'm on this hamster wheel that I can't stop. Like something needs to change. This is not working. And
Yeah.
I don't even think that I like stopped drinking right away or understood that piece of it yet. It was just small things like being able to sit for 1 hour with my pain. I know that you know this, that I've been a yoga instructor for many years now. And I think starting out, it was just that 1 hour of like sitting there on my yoga
Yeah.
mat being like, I can sit with this and it's not going to kill me. Like if I can just sit through this and realize that I can face it even just for an hour, um I'll be okay. And so for
Yeah.
me it was really like little steps. Like maybe I'll replace drinking with a little bit of water. Maybe I'll meditate for just an hour. I started talking to somebody about everything, and it was just an hour a week, but just facing some of that trauma
Yeah.
and just saying it out loud. And then having
Yeah.
someone say to me, like, you're not crazy. Everything that you're feeling right now, all of this anxiety, all of this depression, the ways that you've been coping, this is common. People do this and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay.
Totally.
You're okay. Forgive yourself and let's just find some other
Mm.
ways of handling things. So
Yeah.
yeah, from there it was just like adding on little things in my toolbox, as my counselor at the time called it. I feel like in my late years, kind of early years, it just flip flopped completely where I was like, I can face this and
Yeah.
it's not as scary as it seems. It's little by
Yeah.
little, step by step, brick by brick, but you'll be okay if you'll be better off if you can face the trauma or at least try and sit with the pain. It's okay to sit with pain.
Absolutely. And the other thing, so what Amy's really talking about is coping strategies, right? Can I have some water
Yeah.
instead of alcohol? Understanding like what's triggering you. So that's where the mindfulness piece comes in. And it's like a
Yeah.
buzzword. I know,
I
mindfulness,
know.
but it's huge because, right, if I know, if I can stop and go, what am I feeling and why? That person makes me want to drink because they remind
Hmm.
me of my brother who passed away and now I'm sad.
Hmm.
And it's all it is just emotional awareness, because you
Yes.
have to have that in order to get sober. And I think people, having coping skills is great. Like, and I always tell people, okay, so you're going to go to a party where people are drinking. Do you have a plan? Like, does anybody ever have a plan? No. But if you're going to go to a job interview, you've got a plan. And
Right.
so, right. So things like that, it sounds like you kind of stumbled on a lot of these before you went to therapy. So you just kind of figured some of this stuff out on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, little by little, like started journaling. I'm like, oh, that kind of feels good. Maybe going for a walk.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel a little bit better than, drinking or day drinking with friends. Maybe just going for a walk, going to bed or a little bit earlier. But I will say that therapy did help too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say
Absolutely.
that didn't help. Um, yeah,
Well, and therapy is huge. So, me as a religious person, right? It's like, confessing to God, or
yeah,
when you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, you get a sponsor, you confess to them.
yeah,
You go to therapy, you confess to them. And the healing thing behind this really is that if you're with healthy people, you're confessing and they're looking back at you without judgment. right? You're there. There's no, so it's very healing. Like I'm looking into your eyes and I'm validating everything that you say. And most people from addictive families, either there's trauma like with you, or there's a lot of judgmental codependency trying to change everyone. And so it's just, people are always running, trying to hide from their pain because, you know, they feel like anything they do, they're going to be judged. And that's what's so therapeutic is, wow, I'm, you know, if it's God, I'm forgiven. If it's the therapist, she's validating that my reaction is normal. You know, and that is like so healing. And I think people they don't realize how healing that is because it doesn't seem like it would be, but it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. So obviously a lot of grief for you. What are some maybe misconceptions people have about grief?
Well, I think people, like for myself, and I talk about this in my book, it was like, I've always been a people pleaser. And even with grief, it's like, I didn't want to talk to other people about it because I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And I think when you have a loss that's not, that's a little bit more taboo, like my brother was killed. The reaction and the uncomfortability that that gives other people always made me feel like I had to overcompensate. I have to be really funny during this conversation because I don't want to make that person feel uncomfortable. Or I'll only talk about this if we're out drinking because it's not going to be as heavy as a conversation. It's not going to make me feel as uncomfortable and it's not going to make this person feel as uncomfortable. There was a lot of that. And I think when I finally got sober, I realized that it's not my job to make other people feel comfortable or uncomfortable. You know, it's my job to be true and authentic to myself. And and it's okay for me to share my story and my grief with other people, and how they respond to it is how they respond to it. But I'm being truthful and I'm being honest. And if I have a bad day or I'm struggling with something because maybe there's a trigger on the radio, like a song that reminded me of my brother or an anniversary coming up, it's okay for me to be honest with people and say, today's going to be a little bit of a hard day, or I'm struggling a little bit today.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, one thing with grief is like just honoring whatever you're feeling and being okay with that. And I would make that recommendation to anybody else that's grieving. And then there's a lot of that in my book too, and just being authentically real with everything that I experienced, things that didn't work, things that did work.
And it's a long process. And that's the other challenge is that it can be years later and all of a sudden, like I'll get like all of a sudden, I mean, my brother died in 2015. It's now 2025.
Yeah.
And I'm fine most of the time, but every once in a while, it just hits me like a brick. And I can feel the pain in my gut just go, "Ugh," like, why couldn't he figure it out? Why couldn't he, you know, I mean, and then even after he died, it was like 2 weeks later and my husband, you know, we were driving and I was just sitting there and he's like, "What's wrong?" I mean, people don't, you know, I'm like, "My brother's dead." I mean, you know, and so did you find like some of that where it's just, it's, you know, they call it like complex grief because it doesn't go in an order.
It doesn't
Like
go
people
away.
want to go in an order. Oh, it's a year. You should be fine. Well, you know, I was fine last year after it happened and now I'm not, right? You know?
And going along with, yes, I definitely found that. For example, I mean, my mom died when I was 16. I just turned 40 this month. But I had my daughter 5 years ago and I grieved my mom all over again. I'm like, where is this coming from? But I think becoming a mother yourself and going through and finding, oh my gosh, I'm just like my mom in this sense. Or she would have said that, or she used to like walk around the house and sing songs, and I find myself doing the same thing or being goofy and playful with my daughter. Yeah, you grieve all over and you start thinking about those things again. You know, you get married or you have a baby or you know, all of those things. It just comes up when you least expect it. It doesn't just go away. And I think one thing about grief too is for other people to realize, like, yeah, just because, like you said, it was 2 weeks later and your husband's like, what's wrong? You know, I think that happens so frequently. Like you lose somebody and you go the first month, everybody's kind of there supporting you and maybe bringing you meals and stuff. But yeah, I think it can be a long time, and it is okay. And it is okay to take
Mm,
steps forward and backwards, or need a day where I don't want to get out of, I'm struggling today. I just need to be lazy. I need to Netflix and
yeah.
hang out and have my favorite ice cream snack because it's a hard day. Even this year was really hard. I mean, I turned 40 and I told my husband, so my birthday was on a Friday, and I told my husband on Monday, I'm like, I am really sad. And he says,
Mm.
he's like, do you know why? And I said, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I don't know why. I have anxiety and I'm just feeling sad. And then it hit me. I'm like, you're turning 40 without your twin. That is a big milestone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it made sense. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be extra, lots of self care this week, whatever I need. It was sweet too. My friends threw me like a little surprise 40th birthday. And so I was surrounded by people, and they asked about Tom and they talked about Tom, and that's amazing. That's
Oh,
what we need, and just to
yes.
honor whatever you're feeling in grief.
Absolutely, and honoring the person too, instead of
Yeah.
just avoiding it, like, make their favorite cake or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, I think we get so obsessed and about everything, like saying everything and it's like,
Yeah.
come on, it's okay. Let's talk about, like, I do that with people all the time. So, are you sober? Well, okay. Are you drinking? How much have you been drinking? And
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just brought that up." Then I'm like, "Well,
Just get
somebody's
to the
got to."
point. Yeah. I think like that's
Well,
the
people
thing
don't
is,
want to talk about it.
no.
Oh, and there's all that shame, and to
Yeah.
say, "Look, somebody cares if you're sober or not or whatever." You know what I mean?
Right. Or how you're feeling and your hardships and things. I found that too, writing my memoir is like when some people, well, I feel like when you're sober, you find that comfortability being uncomfortable with things. You push through it.
Yes, yes.
You sit with the
Absolutely.
uncomfortable feelings. But even publishing my memoir, I mean, I was very vulnerable about, generational trauma and my losses and how that made me feel, and kind of taking people in my book down different paths, the things that I did that didn't work, the things that I did that did work. And it can make people feel uncomfortable, especially if they haven't faced any of their trauma, their grief, their family addictions, their own addiction.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the generational trauma. Was there trauma even before your
Yes.
family, like your and then
Yep.
kind
Yep.
of
And
how
I
are
didn't
you
even
working
really
through to
realize it. So I wrote my book. I started my book about 3 years ago. And the reason that I started is I had another hard loss. I lost an aunt, and it was my mom's sister. And she stepped in at about 16 and also helped like raise me. My daughter called her
wow.
grandma. And so she died unexpectedly 3 years ago. And that's another thing about grief is anytime you lose somebody, it can bring up loss of other people. It just all came kind of flashing back. And I finally decided at that point that, and this is when I became sober as well. So going on 3 years, I decided that, I felt a higher calling to, share my story and begin writing so that other people that were going through kind of what I did, the grief, the loss, the trauma, all of it, felt less alone. But as I was writing my story, I decided to do a lot of, it's a memoir. So I'm doing a lot of
Yeah.
investigating on my family history. I'm going back because I really wanted to kind of set the tone of like, I was like putting together like a puzzle.
Did you do a genogram?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Those are
You could,
fun. I've done a ton of those because I
yeah.
got my MS in addiction counseling, and that was one of
Okay.
the things I was good at. And it is very eye opening when you start to connect the dots like, oh, wow, there was 10 of them that are alcoholics and the others were codependent. Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Especially like, but it also helps you just see like where it all started and like where the cycle just keeps
Yeah.
going. And so yeah, I
Yeah.
saw I yeah, it went back. to my mom's dad, my dad's family. There was definitely abuse on both sides. And I think that they
Mm,
both tried to do kind of the best that they could. But I really feel that until people heal, it won't stop. It's just going to keep getting passed down and passed down. And so, yeah, after
yeah.
writing my book, going back, seeing everything, I was like, it ends with me. I'm not passing this on to my daughter. Obviously, I started the healing process in my late 20s, but I wasn't sober. I was
Yeah.
just kind of dabbling into a lot of self care and implementing more self care practices over self destruction. But 3 years ago, I was like, no,
Yeah.
after I really went back and realized that this has been going on for too long, I'm like, done. So I gave up alcohol completely. I'm like, I will sit with any uncomfortable feeling. I'll do whatever it takes because I'm not passing this down to one more generation after me.
Uh,
And so I wrote my
yeah.
book and faced every hardship that you could possibly face, which writing a memoir is not easy. Because you're taking a really hard look at yourself, your family, people you care about. You're being so vulnerable, but
Yeah.
it's worth it. I mean, you can't change unless you can lay it all out on the line and face everything head on. You can't change. So,
Well, and most addictions are related to stuffing, period. I
yeah.
mean, if you want to just get right down to the root of it, we get hurt, we get wounded, we stuff our pain.
Yep.
Then we medicate, and in psychological terms, well, this isn't really psychological. It's called bailing out. So there's like a see, how do I explain it? I had this therapist talk to me about, like, we go through life and we get kind of wounded, maybe we get dumped in 8th grade and we don't deal with it. Right now we start smoking weed. So then the next pain, we don't deal with it. We don't, and the more we bail out, the worse we get into this stuffing and addiction, because if we didn't deal with the first one and the second one and the third one, how in the world are we going to deal with the fourth, the
Right.
fifth, and the sixth one?
Yep.
So by you breaking the cycle, by just basically saying, honey, to your kids, how do you feel, what's going on with you, and then getting them to, rather than bail out, to work through the trauma,
Right.
right? Then they're not going to be tempted to drink or use. And this is like the most important piece.
Yeah. And I always ask her just, if she's having a bad day, I just try to build that rapport with her so that she feels comfortable
Yeah.
talking to me. She's in Girl Scouts and I was like, can I teach the Girl Scout troop, yoga, just like connecting with their feelings and being okay with whatever they're feeling. It is okay. It's not as scary as people
Right.
think to work through whatever you're feeling or even just sit with it. And I tell myself that on my hard
Yeah.
days, I say, just sit with it. Whatever you do, just don't go backwards. You don't need to be
Right.
super productive. You don't need to check a million things off your checklist. If you just need to sit and not go, and as long as you're not going backwards, you're going forwards. So, yeah,
Right. And like for guys, it's like, hey, look, you don't have to cry and scream and go and dig up every monster in the closet if you don't want to. Some people
right.
like it. Like, I want to know everything, but not everybody has to.
Not
But
everybody,
it's like the boogeyman. We think there's something scary in there, but it's just our feelings. and
right.
and a lot of times feelings are just feelings, and
Yeah,
so that's the thing, important, and they tell us things and we need them, but it's okay to have them. They're not going, they're just there to tell you something. They're messengers, right?
that's
And that's
exactly
all.
it.
And
We need to listen to them.
you can, right, and sometimes maybe we don't. I think what's so important is, like, you get to decide.
Yeah,
And once you realize you have a choice, I mean, and I'm not talking about extreme trauma, but once we start to heal, like, okay, I can decide if I'm going to let this thing rule my day, or I'm going to make a change, or I know that tomorrow I probably won't feel this way because our emotions are fleeting. And so basically, the idea with sobriety is these feelings don't own me, I own them,
yeah.
right? I own my
I think
behavior.
labeling a feeling too always helps me. Like if
Yeah.
I'm feeling out of sorts, I just tell myself, "Oh, I'm feeling a little anxious today and I'll be okay." And like you said, I'll probably feel better tomorrow. I'll check back in with myself in a little bit. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So your book, Climbing a Mountain After a Landslide. Is that a reference to being physically active? I'm a big hiker, skier. I love all that stuff. I find it to be one of the most therapeutic things in the world.
Yeah, kind of. It's a little bit of a metaphor. My publisher liked it because obviously Fleetwood Dreams
Well,
is our
yeah.
Lion song. But yes, I think it's just basically all encompassing when climbing a mountain. It's facing the trauma, it's finding a therapist and talking about things, it's
Yeah.
sobriety, it's admitting whatever your feelings are, it's discovering grief and being okay with it, it's discovering sobriety and being
Yeah.
okay with it. I don't want to 100%, but I don't want to 100% say coming out the other end, but a little bit. Stopping the generational
Yeah.
trauma, I think, is a big win. Um,
Right. Yeah. You would like the Jelly Roll song. Have you heard that? I'm not okay, but it's all gonna be all right.
no, but I am going to listen to it
Oh,
after
it's
this
great.
show.
Yeah. We're not okay, but it's all gonna be
It's
all
going to be
right,
all
right?
right. Yeah.
So talk to me about kindness, forgiveness, acts of kindness, things like that. For me, a big one is I would have to say gratitude saved
Yes.
my life.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah. I'm with you on
Saved
that.
I literally mean saved my life because I was such a negative person. So gratitude and then acceptance, right? I
Yeah.
have to accept, right? I am 52. I don't have children and I wasted a lot of time drinking and there's just other stuff. And I could sit and ruminate with it, but I can't change it.
Right.
So if I can accept it, I can move forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just going to go round and round, right? You could go round and round about your situation and your brother and your mom and how hard it was and it was. But you can't change it, right?
No.
So there's acceptance. But you had mentioned acts of kindness and purpose and things like that
Yeah.
as helping you in the, I call it life recovery,
Yeah.
recovering from life because it's
Yeah.
hard.
It's hard. Well, yeah, that was a big lifesaver for me. I don't know if, well, I don't know if I shared this, but I had originally gone to school to be a news reporter, and that was something I was really set on for a long time. And I completely changed directions after losing my twin, and I decided that it was really important for me to help other people that were struggling. I've always been very
Mm.
empathetic, but I think
Wow.
that made me even more empathetic
Uh-huh.
after kind of exploring that, being a news reporter for so long, it's completely switched gears. I had a friend who was a case manager and he was like, "Hey, I know you have experience working as a caregiver and you have your bachelor's degree. I really think this is a job that you would be really great at." And so I did that for 10 years, and I think just helping other people really changed my life
Yeah.
and made me realize like we're all struggling in some capacity, and giving back,
Yeah.
and I don't know, just such a big part of healing and helping other people in their lives. And even with yoga too,
It
people hold so much trauma in their body, and just being able to help people sit with that and work through it and feel better physically, which then in essence helps them feel better mentally. I just like helping other people. And it's just been a huge part of obviously my recovery, kind of coming out the other side of grief. Yeah.
The other thing, too, when you say people hold trauma, it's so true. And in fact, there's actually chemicals in our brainstem that are secreted when we let go of trauma. And when we don't, it comes out in other ways. And they call it psychosomatic, right? And my mom's like this, where you get sick a lot. You
Yeah.
have diabetes, you have diverticulitis, you have all these things because you haven't resolved the trauma or you don't know how. Now, not everybody subscribes to that, but I've seen it. I'm just saying.
I believe it 100% because while I was writing my book, which is right here by the way, but while I was writing this,
Yes.
talking about the trauma that I went through with my brother, I had for like a couple months the worst hip and back pain. I could not, and it was like because I'm like
Oh,
locking myself in this room and I'm putting myself back in that space, and I'm like, wow, talk about your trauma sitting in your body. I could not pinpoint it. I had an MRI, I was doing acupuncture, I was doing physical therapy. I'm still teaching. And as soon as I'm done with this chapter and I'm cruising along with the editing process and the book is published, boom, it's gone. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
And they say that childhood trauma really sits in the hips and the low back. And I'm like, when it literally was like coming up and it was just sitting there until those chapters were done. I'm like, so no, I 100% believe in that and know that it's true. Because like I said, I went to all the medical and I did all the holistic thing. Nothing was happening until I was finished with that chapter and moving along. And then, like I said, the book came. I was like, okay. So yeah.
I can breathe again.
I can breathe again.
So what is it again? Climbing a mountain after a landslide? Is that the whole book? What's the whole title?
The whole title is Fleetwood Dreams.
Fleetwood Dreams or?
Yep. Climbing a mountain after a landslide. Yep.
So kind of tell us about that and where people can pick up your book.
You can pick up my book through my publisher, 1016 Press. You can pick up my book on my own website, www.amysazama.com, Barnes & Noble, Walmart online, and you can also pick it up on Amazon. It also comes with a little hope bracelet, which I'm wearing today, and a little mesh bag, and it also comes with a mark as well. Yeah.
Nice. That's fantastic. Well, so Amy, just in closing, if somebody listening struggling with grief, addiction, or trauma, what would be some parting words for them, some advice, or maybe just one small step that they can take today toward healing?
Whatever you're feeling in your grief and your journey it's okay. Just be true to yourself, love yourself, do one small act of self-care, and build from there. And things will get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but you just have to give yourself the grace that you need to take it day by day.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.